Hello and welcome. My name is Angela Lee, co-president of the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association. It's wonderful to have you all here today with us at the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association 3rd Annual Art Symposium, which is also the main event for the 6th edition of the annual Hong Kong Art Week. The Hong Kong Art Gallery Association is a member-based nonprofit organization founded in 2012. We currently have 58 galleries as our members, ranging from the big international galleries who have opened outposts in Hong Kong to the local veteran galleries, as well as younger, newer galleries. Our primary objectives are to increase the understanding and appreciation of the primary market and the crucial role of art galleries within Hong Kong's cultural ecology, provide one voice to our member galleries, further best practices and the professional and business development of our members, enrich Hong Kong's cultural ecology and contribute to the local community in partnership with other cultural and nonprofit institutions, reinforcing Hong Kong as one of the most dynamic and important art centers in the world. Over the past 6 years, Hong Kong Art Gallery Association has dedicated our efforts to foster different specially targeted groups of the public and the art community. We've organized year-round talks, luncheons, workshops, gallery tours, studio visits, gallery walks, and family art days, which have been attended by collectors, curators, current and aspiring art professionals, as well as the public. We've been acting as a bridge between our member galleries to connect and share our experiences and have become a valuable networking platform for our industry. We have an internship program open to art students and aspiring individuals for them to gain valuable experiences before stepping into the art world. We have our own Artist Residency Board funding scheme and have successfully sent several local artists to pursue overseas opportunities to further their artistic careers. We are one of the founding members of the Asia Pacific Art Gallery Alliance, working with other gallery associations in the Asia Pacific region, engaging with the art community on a regional level. We have been a grantee of the Hong Kong Arts Development Council since 2014. With the generous support of H Queens as our new main sponsor, we have managed to organize the Art Week for the 6th consecutive year. This year, for the 3rd time, as part of our Art Week, we're collaborating with Asia Society Hong Kong Centre to present a 2-day symposium. We'd also like to thank Art Basel Hong Kong, Artsy as our official online partner, Poitaroha Gallery, Kwai Fong Hin Art Gallery, Gallery Aura, the Mexican Consulate, who are also sponsors of this year's Hong Kong Art Week and Art Symposium. Here, I'd like to pass over to Adriana Alvarez-Nicole, our co-president, to tell us more about this year's Art Symposium.
Welcome, everyone. It's exciting for me to be standing up here, having just taken the position of co-president of the association, following on the footsteps of Henrietta Tsui and Katie DeTilly, who basically spearheaded the creation of the association, and joining Angela as a team to bring many events throughout the year, including today's symposium. I'd like to especially thank Fabio Rossi from Rossi & Rossi and William Molesworth from the SART for curating what will be a fantastic 2 days of conversations, which will bring not only the best of Hong Kong, but also international personalities to our city. I would particularly like to thank the member galleries that are actively participating in the symposium. Among the speakers that you'll be listening to in the next 2 days, we'll hear from Lorraine Malang, director of Edward Malang Gallery, Daphne King, director of Allison Fine Arts, Catherine Quay from Quay Fung King Gallery, and finally, Emmanuel Perrotan from Perrotan Gallery. I would also like to thank the 3 galleries that have collaborated with us to bring art to the symposium, starting with Parkview, which is presenting a VR installation by artist Desmond Long and that you can enjoy in between the talks at the back of the room. A2Z Gallery, which will be bringing a poetry performance this evening by Redek. And finally, Puerta Roja, my own gallery, which will be presenting a performance by Fernando Prats. In terms of the themes for the symposium, titled Looking Up, Remapping Hong Kong's art scene in the era of connectivity and ruptures, we really wanted to address topics that are burning and that will affect the future of the city and its art scene. We will begin this Friday with the One Belt, One Road talk, how are Western museums collecting contemporary art from Asia, and following tomorrow with female artists in Asia. This is in honor of Pan Yu Liang exhibition, which you can also appreciate here in Asia Society. And finally, we will close with new trends, the impact of the next wave of international galleries coming to Hong Kong. The day tomorrow will also finalize for a keynote talk by Tobias Berger, Head of Arts at Taikun. So with further ado, I will make a brief introduction to our first speakers. All of them have extremely impressive CVs, and it would take too much of my time to go over them. You can read them in your leaflets, and I don't want to take more time from listening directly from them. But I'm very, very proud to present first fellow Mexican, Curator Cuauhtémoc Medina, who just arrived actually from Shanghai. We're extremely grateful that he made the effort of coming to Hong Kong just after the opening of the 12th edition of the Shanghai Biennale. Cuauhtémoc has been a full-time researcher at the Visual Research Center at UNAM, the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He was the first associate curator of Latin American collections at Tate Modern between the years of 2002 and 2008. And he's currently chief curator at the MOAC Museum in Mexico City. After a presentation by Cuauhtémoc, he will be joined in a panel discussion by Iola Lenzi, curator, critic, and historian of Southeast Asian art, Harold Kramer, associate professor, School of Creative Media, City University of Hong Kong, Lorraine Malang, director of Edward Malang, and thanking all the speakers for their insight, and particularly to H.E. Masters, Almanac editor and editor-at-large at Art Asia Pacific magazine, who will help our panelists hopefully give us a very insightful conversation. So without further ado, Cuauhtémoc, bienvenido a Hong Kong.
Hello, thank you a lot. I'm actually very, very happy to be here. And I need to tell you that what I'm going to say is probably going to be improvised and quite raw, because literally you're going to get the first cut from the Shanghai Biennial. This is the first PowerPoint I make out of the show. And I, of course, want to thank Angela and Adriana, who invited me in the first place in the name of the association. Jessica Herlakian has been trying unsuccessfully to get me to work in advance by email, and I need to apologize publicly because I never managed to get through that. And I really appreciate the kindness and help from the Mexican consulate and from Damian Martinez, the consul, that have been very, very, very instrumental in getting me to this talk. I'm going to say and start alluding to the title of this morning. I was quite impressed by the fact that you titled this talk alluding to the One Belt, One Way policy. Of course, I had to check in Wikipedia what was it about because I'm relatively foreign to the debate. But I thought that it would be interesting to start alluding to it, somehow to also get into the way Shanghai Biennial operates by pointing out to this work, which is something I'm just going to sketch you, the intervention by Yan Fudong, indeed the only way. And as you can see, I'm going to try to move here fast. It was an action that was made twice for the camera with 500 extras, students, volunteers, that came down from in a big staircase in the Power Station of Art that was transformed with a red carpet and mirrors in the sides and the back, so as to create something that I see as a condensation of two different aesthetics. The aesthetic of officiality in China and the aesthetics of Hollywood, glitter, glamour. And of course, this is the only way. It's a work about mass behavior. It's a work about the accumulation of activity. It's a work about precisely the single one way. And as I am telling you, it's part of something that I see as an attempt by Yang Fudong to create something of a new history of China by a specific way of producing. He's been filming in gallery and museum spaces, creating productions for the camera, and then the disjointed film, in a certain way, is trying to make a whole allegory of what China is along history. I thought it was an interesting way to start talking about how biennials, above all, are geopolitical salons, in the sense that the negotiation of geographies is to a great extent the source of their power. And I just want to make a short art history lesson and point you to a very significant fact. This is the geography of biennials up to the 1970s. It is actually the shape of the growth of biennials in its second phase. Phase one was the invention of the International Art Fair World Expo Salon of the late 19th century in Venice and in the Carnegie International, the two events that still exist as the reference to the beginning of the form. The second wave had to do with the expression of modernization, with a proud attempt to import modern art to a number of geographies that exactly pretended to be central to the presentation of that project. A project that, as you can see, extended to the south only in as much as it touched countries that had a clear Western project of modernization, Brazil and Australia. Then, of course, that geography has a certain implication. It's the geography of international art. It's what I try to make people understand in reality is NATO art. It's still the reference that people get into their minds whenever they fall back, they recede, they regress into thinking the art world as if it were a modern project. This is the explosion that occurred in the 80s. It was an explosion that had to do with the rebellion of the geography of many different art communities to keep on accepting the centrality of the center. It was a rebellion that had a point of origin, and this was the invention of the Havana Biennial as some sort of salon of refusés at a global scale, the place where all the people that had been left out from the narrative actually started to claim back their space. Funnily enough, as we all know by now, this is a project that had a curator. Mr. Castro decided by decree to have a biennial in the lines of the tricontinental, namely of a geography that the Cubans were trying to activate of the unity of Asians, Africans, and Latin Americans against the empire. And because of his confusion, he actually brought an incredibly interesting idea to the fore, to have an art event running in the same lines than that failed attempt of international subversion. In effect, one has to say, I keep on trying to explain to my students in the classroom, Castro failed to change the world, but he changed the art world. And this is the major effect of that challenge 30 years later. We have a situation where effectively the biennial has become a decentered event, and an event whose role is to keep on decentering the art world. Differently from many curators that keep on complaining about the fact that there's a biennial every 2 days or 3 days along the year, I'm a full enthusiast, still completely committed curator to the logic of the biennial, precisely because it's a type of exhibition that prevents anybody around the world from having the idea that he or she or it, now we are going to have certainly non-human exhibition consumers, has an understanding, a control, and an ability to know the art world in depth all over the place in any specific summary. What we can have is something that I think is extremely interesting, is some sort of multi-ethnic, multinational ceremony that consists in establishing a center of culture and the art world every 3 days. I want to make you think that the biennial is in reality this ceremony. I'm using an old slide of Jean-Nouvel Martin presiding the Tibetan monks about to create a mandala in La Villette in Paris for the Magicien de la Terre exhibition. But I want you to think that biennials, before they are exhibition places, they are the bearers of an international ceremony consisting in migrating the center of culture into a new place every 2 weeks. And I'm going to use this event that I was part of to explain you that logic. This is Manifesta 9, the map of the different manifestas up to Manifesta 9 in 2012, an event that I was lucky to curate. It is a biennial that works a little bit like the Olympics, like Miss Universe, by cities that bid to make the biennial in Europe. So it's a biennial that has to reinvent the institution every 2 years. And what I organized one that is in this particularly deserted place, a former mine in Limburg, in the eastern part of Belgium, the poorest part of Belgium, and this is what caught my attention. I'm sure that you had never heard of Genk, or you probably first heard of Genk through Manifesta. And it was this promotional map in the materials of Manifesta. All the roads led to Genk. All the roads led to Rome. And here we are with the one belt, one road. It was a little bit of a long detour. All the roads go from China into China. This is a particular figure. I'm just trying to introduce you to the idea that independently of what kind of reality this discourse has, it really has a significance for what we do. The question of what is the geography of culture, it is a question that has to do with the politics of this moment in history. Who are the people we interact with? Where are the ideas we are getting into our brain? Not only where is the food coming, where are the ideas coming? What is the ADN that we are creating through accepting the possibility of becoming others? Then again, since I don't know a lot about that, I will tell you that roughly, one interesting thing about the Shanghai Biennial is that rather than working on this map, which I would claim still is reinforcing the notion of a certain Eurocentric narrative, because funnily enough, the Silk Road had another pole. There's something of a Freudian slip of the tongue in the referent. A very significant part of the exhibition I'm going to comment with you has its place in having a center this space. Is this the other ocean? Is the Pacific, not the Atlantic. Is a decentering that has to do with the peculiarity that the academic, scientific, or biennial committee of Shanghai decided to hire a Mexican curator. And this in turn decided to make a team made of a Colombian, a Japanese, and a Chinese. And that, by force, but also by decision, implied the possibility of, in a certain way, diminishing the space of the European former center. And I simply want to talk about the complication of those operations to suggest that probably, in this case, the Shanghai Biennial is talking about another belt. Not the one, but the other belt. Now, let's go to talk about what is the way biennial art operate. I'm going to try to just convince you of one idea, very simple, I think. Contemporary artworks, especially artworks that are set in the most public form of exhibition that we know, which is precisely the biennial. It is the exhibition that understands its public sphere as that of the multiple spheres of true cosmopolitanism. You see a number of spheres there, balls moving. So it takes place in Shanghai. It's the 12th edition of the Shanghai Biennial, mostly with a Chinese audience. But it has an international academic committee. And it accepted that the Mexican curator started to work on the basis of this word. This is a poem by E. Cummings from 1931. As you can see, even those that are English speakers will find it difficult. It's one of the hard ones, the avant-garde, cutting-edge poems of Cummings. And it has the peculiarity that in a moment when he was making a lot of texts criticizing progress, he felt the need of making a tool. I think on this word as a tool that Cummings made once, he coined it, put it in the drawer of poetry, and forgot about it. Or he didn't find what to do with it. And then it was there like a new old clock. When I was reading his complete works in the spring of 2017, so when I was invited to do the Shanghai Biennial, I had come across this word and thought, this is a very good way to talk about what's happening in the world today. It's not any longer the crisis of progress, it's the impossibility of distinguishing progress from regression. And from that point, I also thought that there could be a number of other topics where impossibility of establishing a former central division, a former central position, a former central distinction could be pointed out. This is the conceptual map of the Shanghai Biennial. These are somehow the themes that we set ourselves to work, and then the poetic equivalent that we found in E. Cummings' works to bring into the exhibition. It is the underlying structure that is not fully spelled out in the biennial, both because of the need of finding a way around certain limitations of discourse, but also so as to keep consistency with the poetic inspiration and the poetic logic of the project. I believe that the fourth section, which is a section about the nature of culture, has a title that might refer also to the single one course, to the only way, to the expectation of a way of social administration. So these different lines of research were taken by these four curators that I told you, Wei Wang, or Wang Wenwei from Shanghai, Maria Belén Sáez de Ibarra from Colombia, and Yuki Kamiya from Japan, who have different institutional enclosures, and we were together doing studio visits and doing a lot of work so as to produce an exhibition that was based on those lines and also in the works that could come from the encounter with the intellectual body of materials that somehow have to do with a notion or a critique of this moment in time on a similar basis. Some of the texts that somehow illuminate the project, are now part of this reader that you can get in the PSA. It's only in Chinese, and I need to tell you, is, I believe, quite daring. At the same time, we try to infuse the notion of the ambivalence of the work in the way the show operates. We asked Frida Escobedo, the architect that had the commission of the Serpentine Pavilion this summer, to make a proposal how to translate our project into the space. She came with this very interesting idea of having an exhibition that would have two sides. Rooms that would be front rooms and back rooms. Corridors that would give the PSA, which is an industrial building, the feeling of being a composed, formal building that would reveal immediately as a kind of stage. Then we had a number of works that commented directly on the theme. Fernando Sanchez Castillo, the Spanish sculptor, is a Spanish sculptor that has specialized himself in making a work of the critique of symbols of power, made a sculpture that is around 4 meters tall, called Swing, that effectively uses a very old-fashioned form, the statue, as the point to suspend a swing. Because of his suggestion of this work, some of the big expanses of the exhibition are in reality thought as if they are squares, as if they are the public squares of the exhibition, where there's an expectation of having both public activity, but also a certain mass communication, a certain evocation of some forms of mass propaganda. This is Enrique Jesic's work, as you could say, made with cardboard, disused from international trade, but also the source of income of some of the most poor people around the world. He has been using this material to make certain political slogans around the world. And he used, in this case, the title of one of the tracts by Lenin in 1905 that says, 1 step forward, 2 steps backward, which is a text by Lenin that refers to the situation of the Communist Party in Russia at that point. We had the collaboration of Claire Fontaine, the group originally from Paris, who made a number of light works. One of them, this piece, Evil Good, that if you pay attention, of course, first hand it looks as if, oh, they sold the PSA to a specific brand. But if you actually notice, it's lacking the bite. So it somehow discloses the pretense of innocence, the attempt to go back to paradisiacal innocence of this particular global identity. We had a piece by Cristina Lucas, Spanish artist, Clockwise, that consists in a big space, 40 meters long, with 360 machine clocks of machines for clocks, of course, Chinese made. These different clocks are adjusted to be 1 minute after the other, so as to cover a whole day. It's a particularly nice piece to experience. It has a strange silence, full of these little ticks around, and it is very prone to meditation and selfies, which is a very ambivalent combination. Buddhist self-promotion. But of course, he's bringing into the room the feeling of the continuous day, the never-ending time, the nondescript condition of time of the contemporary experience. The fact that there is no night and day any longer, that we are all in limbo. We used it. So now I guess that you can see how we were treating the Shanghai PSA as a public space with certain structures that evoke certain conditions of public architecture, for a work by Venezuelan artist Alexander Apostol, who took photographs of Venezuelan transvestites that were dressed to create a catalog of the different characters of revolutions in the South. Of course, he has a revolution to take the models above others, a particular state, which is the Venezuelan. But in fact, it is like precisely the title says it very well, a dramatis personae, is the list of characters of an endless theater play, where in every moment in history, you need to have the same kind of characters independently of who's occupying that position. And this is a whole kind of building that in the back is creating the conditions to show a piece by Meiro Koizumi, a Japanese artist. It's called The New Breath Just After the Tempest, 7 Deadly Sins, which is a really beautiful kind of video dance wall that is swinging in the back of the building, that in reality expresses the dreams, the wishes of young immigrant French youngsters, French citizens that provide a lot of people for the French military, who tell in a different moment of their experiences as second-class citizens in France. It is of course a work about the way in which a caste system is developing in contemporary citizenship, but also a way to look at the tension between a certain reality and the space of energy and aspiration that people in many places of the world actually live. A few meters away, you would have found this enormous installation that went the 3 levels of the building by Chilean artist Voluspa Harpa. These works are made with secret documents full of secrets. Now, there are secret documents that have been censored. There are the documents that you can have access through the Freedom of Information Act in America about the interventions that were done by the United States in Latin America primarily, but in other parts of the world. Documents that still today are censored. Therefore, documents that describe continuously important operations that are still full of secrets. So it is a work that is describing both the specificity of secret, the sculptural value of secrets, but it's also displaying material that, since it's already censored, can't pass censorship today. Just behind that, there was a piece by Reiner Leyva Novo. Reiner Novo is a Cuban artist that we had, as it happened with other works, certain complications. We had to actually resubmit works of him at different moments. We had the joy of sharing with the licensing organization a whole catalog of works of this artist along some months. So by the third hand, in the poker game of having works rejected, Reiner came with a very beautiful idea. He would paint a white wall in the back of the room. It had to be a visible wall, on white. The wall had to be white, and the work is called Nothing About Nothing. And this is going to be painted by volunteers along the Biennial, renewing the commitment of this expression to non-expression. I understand that some of the interest of this conference has to do with how is it that Hong Kongese artists make it out of Hong Kong. And let me tell you that at least in Shanghai, they had a great time. So I can give you a good report about that process of exploitation. So I'll start but by telling you that Nadim Abbas was a particularly useful artist in this event because he deliberately chose places that were hidden so as to put his works. Works that have to do with the notion of mimeticism, of practically behaving as an artist that accommodates to an environment, that disappears in the environment, that is there to be lost. I'm going to jump quickly because they are telling me that I'm gone. So to show you somehow quickly some of the lines of discussion, precisely questions about war, conflict, history, questions about the way nature and human society now mix. Ursula Biermann's work talks about the way a forest was granted legal rights in court in Ecuador. Works about the reparation of trauma. Kader Atia intervened the floor with this traditional technique of reparation, highlighting the scar of the building. He did it next to a piece by forensic architecture. What's forensic architecture? That is in reality a study of how to use different interactive means so as to map the history of the disappearance of 43 students in Mexico in a collaboration between police forces and criminals. And Amalia Pica, for instance, was working in relation to the history of communication and language between great apes and scientists, putting the audience in relation to certain means that have been used to that communication. Miguel Rojas was mapping the destruction of the Amazonia. I just want to reach some of the Hong Kongese artists. Well, this is an interesting one because he's Taiwanese, but Sang Shuyan comes from a family that makes paper offerings for funerals, and he developed these little mice that, as you can see, was dying to see the exhibition, actually died when he arrived. And he had some very funny last words in different places of the building. I find him particularly sad and beautiful. Macarena Ruiz Tagle, you should go to Shanghai just to get one of these postcards. It's incredibly useful because you can look at the sky in your city and find out which is the color of pollution in your sky. I think it's something that you all need to have in your bag on a daily basis. But Samson Young, of course, he's Congolese still. We showed a very beautiful new piece, which is one of the muted situations, a beautiful piece of an orchestra that has been muted to the point that you only listen to the sound of the musicians' clothes, the way the instruments sound just as objects, the feeling of rustle, and whatever that you're not meant to listen in a performance. We had Francis Alice, that is a key, and we had CNG, Clarangom. We literally imported a project that they did in collaboration with the Asian Art Archives in Hong Kong that consisted in making an art quiz. Here they did, of course, about Hong Kong, there about the history, the hidden history of art in Shanghai, that later on is installed in this bedroom in TVs. But it was essentially a use of a popular cultural form to explore the unconscious of a place. And I'm going to finalize just showing you this beautiful piece by Xu Ji, which is very much my representation of what culture should be, something that is undead, still kind of pretending to move, but wise as a fox. And a big installation by Louis Zhang, Material World Night, that is really an extraordinary stage of saturation of senses, religious concepts, and electronic devices that map out the arrival of a new superhero, precisely the Material Night. And this is a work that was meant to help the audience forget entirely the whole of the show. They come clean, relieved, pardoned. And one beautiful thing of it is that he's using one really viable material, which is that she borrowed the original sets of Ultraman and in the 1970s that belonged to a company in Japan, so as to have this new material night boy. Here you have it, appearing in really important landscapes of city destruction. So all in all, as you can see, it was an exercise of trying to make an exhibition that is commenting the world, and somehow that, if in a certain way comments about China, is by the implications that some of these works have in this locality. And I'm just showing you, to finish, the images of the reconstruction of the eclipses that Shanghai is going to see in the next 1,000 years, as they were interpreted by Pablo Vargas Lugo. Thank you very much.